Chris Tabb, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Joe?
Good. So today on the Data Nerd Herd, we have Chris Tabb joining us all the way from the UK. So thanks for joining us. For people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. So I'm, I suppose, true to say, a data nerd. So Chris Tabb from London, a partner in a data analytics company, leading edge IT. Good to be on the show, Joe.
Awesome. Yeah. So we met, about a month ago or thereabouts, maybe a bit more. But yeah, as you say, gate crashed one of our our Let's Talk Data Engineering chats on Friday, and I think you're asking some really good questions in the threads there. So just had you on and was thoroughly impressed by your knowledge, and thank you so much for having you on the Nerd Herd, as well as other discussions that we have on the live stream. So welcome.
That was a great gate crash. One of my claims to fame now. It used to be parties back in the day, but now live shows about data. So yeah, it's good.
Moving up in the world.
Step by step.
Did you ever go to Gate Crashers, the festival in England back in the day, or?
No, I do. Well, there were I know of those ones, but I didn't go to that one. There was quite a few Fantasia and some other ones back in those days, long time ago.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So yeah, I guess what got you? You said you're a data nerd. Like, what got you into data? Why are you a data nerd?
So I think by fluke, I think is the quick short answer. I background. I liked accounts. I like the numbers part, but I probably wasn't that good at that aspect. I got a job working for Cognos back in the 90s, just in the back end administration, but had the opportunity to attend a lot of the courses. Was building OLAP cubes and writing reports in products like Impromptu and PowerPlay back then. And it just seemed to love it. It was bringing numbers to life. It was and seeing the reaction to some building a report for someone that they went, wow, I can do this now, or now I can actually work this out. And it was very rewarding, really, to be able to go, okay, well, I'm all right at this, and I quite enjoyed it as well. If I didn't always get it right, and there's probably a lot of people back in the old days, I was pestering them, trying to work out, what the difference between a file format, one type and another, and how I set my ODBC drivers, and but you pick these things up along the way, and and ever since then, any role I've done is been data centric, really. It keeps me up at night, and it keeps me interested.
Interesting. So you didn't have any a formal background then in data, or did you just kind
of? No. So I'm probably the I'm not suggesting anyone take this route at all. But yeah, I didn't study computer science at university or college. Mine was economics, maths. Dabbling in a bit of accounts, but as I say, didn't progress it that far. Went out into the big wide world instead, and found opportunity. And I think it's getting that opportunity is the challenge probably nowadays to get noticed. I mean, we touched on this the other day, Joe, about hiring people and what I look for in the skills for bringing people in. And I question myself sometimes, if I saw my CV come in. Nowadays, would I hire myself? So you have to look beyond just the credentials or maybe the study, or focusing on one part of the study they may have done to an attitude, a desire to learn, or passion about data, which we had a chat about the other day. Is you can't hide that. You can't make passion up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I often ask the same question to myself too. Like, if I saw myself coming through the proverbial door these days, not that anyone goes through doors anymore, it's all emailed or electronic form. But yeah, I have the same question: would I have hired myself? It's a hard one to assess, because on paper I look like shit. Actually, it's no graduate degree, that kind of thing. Haven't worked at a FANG company. I work with FANG companies, but I don't work at them. And so I mean, it's one of those things I don't know that I would hire myself, honestly. If I were just going off of, the kind of the rote way you'd hire somebody looking at a CV, like, just to be frank, right? And so, and you're right, it's assessing all those intangibles, and that's how would you figure that out?
So I think I go back, it was a lot easier back at the beginning, because I mean, we're talking about the scope of things. So you worked in IT right at the beginning. Then after that, okay, it started specializing out more and more. So getting in at the early days, you had to have a bit of I use the term Swiss Army knife, a bit of knowledge on everything, and you were able to get exposure on everything. Those foundation skills, I think I rely on so much nowadays. Talking to different people and understanding, the infrastructure perspective, the network perspective, the applications, the cloud architecture. So understanding all those bits and be able to relate it to the old days of me setting up what we call the DL380 compact pizza boxes, we used to call them, slotting them into a rack and then going in, putting the CD in and doing the installation, then doing the configuration, and then going and speaking to the users to go and find out what reporting they wanted as well. It was, we had, in fact, the three partners in leading edge IT, we all met when we worked at a company called BMW back 20 odd years ago. And we were a 3-man department that did everything from the infrastructure to the database setup, to the ETL setup, to the reporting tool setup, to getting the requirements, to actually building it. And I think some of the skills that we learned and some of the stuff there, we say, like, looking back in history of what things are still relevant, and sometimes people overlook these things, is that stuff was foundational. So I think the new generation come in, you need to get that foundation from somewhere, and you're not going to get that from going and starting in one company and in 6 months or a year. You're never going to be able to get that sort of scope. So I'm not saying that's the only route, but I think that definitely would help.
Interesting. What do you see that's I suppose not changed in data?
The end. I think the end consumer. So people still need these insight reports to make business decisions. We probably got more advanced with those business decisions. Before they were very much descriptive and making decisions based on things that historically had happened. I think moving forward at maturity, you start looking into less in the rear view mirror, more into the road ahead. So I think that's that hasn't changed. We're still delivering this data for it to be consumed. I think what has changed is all the automation, all the stuff that we had a lot of fun with back in the day, maybe like configuring Exadata machines and the Oracle bitmap indexes and partitioning strategies and all that other stuff that used to come with it. But that is no longer, it's good. Again, I think I still probably use that knowledge every now and then to understand how something's working within a software as a service package, but it's not something I have to worry about. I've passed that responsibility. I don't have to deal with that sort of aspect. So so things have got easier, I think, with regards to putting foundation pipeline, or the foundation needed for pipelines. And I think another thing that we used to have to work out is those days of doing capex calculations of, okay, right now we're going to build how much data do you need in 5 years time? How many users are you going to have? What's our peak load going to be? Our high watermark and that, and trying to work that out and scale it, and then go and get the budget for it to go and the world of cloud and pay as you go services and that very much OpEx focus has definitely changed the landscape and help with that agile approach, help with delivering quicker and delivering more value. But I think that's come with its with the downside, and I think there's sometimes maybe more enterprise decisions or things that you should be looking further ahead. You end up with three CRMs being spun up within one system, within one company, because there's no coordination between the different divisions, and you're allowing too much self control or decision making happening within the company. But that's a fine line you think you need for that, because you can't go to that old days of enterprise sort of thing. Right, you're using this Oracle suite of everything. Here you go. Right, here you go, guys. I've made that decision for you. Go and build it. That's the opposite end of the extreme. So I think finding the balance is what you need to in this modern world now, because I think you can't go waterfalls old school. Agile's great, but you need some levels of controls, especially with a platform as a service. So what is going to be your foundations, that your tenants that you're going to put on there can do whatever they want. They could use their own orchestration tool to some degree, or they could use their own transformation logic. One could be using Matillion, one could be using Airbyte, or some other newer stuff for some of its pieces. So I think knowing when you can mix and match, and when you need to have it as a standard service that everyone buys into, and where you can allow people to deviate and work what works maybe for that department, or especially large companies. They could be different countries, different skill sets, maybe different legacy products that are already there, and it doesn't make sense to go and rip it all out and design it all again. Pragmatism, which is a topic we covered the other day as well, is when have that pragmatic approach to your architecture, where you're designing your pipelines. Is you need to sometimes the right choice isn't the best architecture solution is not the right choice for you at that time.
That's a good point. I think it was Neil Ford, he writes a lot on architecture. I think he said the goal of good architecture is to find the best, or the least of the worst options out there. So really like that, because it's true. I mean, it's such a balance, and especially as business is very dynamic too. It's really difficult to put your stake in the ground and say, well, this is how it's going to be forever, or even for the next. Because the business changes a lot right now, and then also the technology, as you point out, everything's changing very rapidly in the data space right now. Some things are getting easier. I would say some things are getting harder. The harder things are actually, I think, understanding how to make sense of everything. Where would you be pragmatic, and where would you run the risk of maybe not even a risk, but is there an option for being intentionally not pragmatic?
I think if there's an ulterior motive, maybe, or maybe there is I've seen a situation where there may be an event happening in a company, maybe an IPO, or maybe a story that needs to be told. So, the pragmatic approach is you need to go a particular way because other things are steering it. But I think the other thing you're talking about, doing the options, looking at, I always have a do nothing option. So whenever it's happening, I say, well, we don't have to do anything. We can stay. We can stand still. And that's always a good baseline to look to see where you can do nothing if you want, but that's not gonna help solve any of the problems you've got at the moment. So I think and I think the other thing on architecture, which I suppose, taking from architecting buildings or houses or offices or there's a fine line in that architect designing something that he wants and his view of, and he has to remember the tenants that are going to live in it, or the offices that are going to occupy it, or things like that. So some of probably the best buildings in the world that are famous architects, they're probably not that useful to actually live in or actually be your office. But I think that's the same thing with architecting data platforms as well, is that at the end of the day, you need to, it does, just because something looks really, back to that enterprise architect thing, a nice little pretty picture that shows all these technologies and and maybe it hasn't taken into account that maybe pragmatic approach in some areas. And but for the people using it, or for the people that actually have to use that system, that now have to follow certain processes, or you've created a single point of not failure, but single point of maybe the old days of a service bus or something. So you've got everyone having to wait for them to go and put something in a SOA architecture style. So microservices solve that. So it's what maybe not what looks all the best technologies, but what's right for your company and the people that are there and how they can adapt and move to that way of working. That's another key thing I think that gets overlooked.
I mean, how does one become pragmatic? How do you learn to be pragmatic?
I think the first thing is not to be emotionally attached about something. So if you've worked this system for ages, you've coded through the nights on it for many days, that it's creaking, you know that it's probably the right time, but you want to defend it. That's your baby that you've been with. So I think the first thing to always check is, have I got an emotional attachment in this decision that I'm making? And if you can honestly say no, then after that you need to put yourself into each of the different stakeholders or personas that are part of this decision that needs to be made, and you need to look at it from each of those viewpoints. And when you're scoring, I talked about having the option of doing nothing. So you'd score each of the options, but in your mind maybe score it in the way that would be seen by each of those. And I think the other key thing is that when you are making these pragmatic decisions, you can't make them on your own. You need to make them as a collective with all those stakeholders that are in there. They need to be able to see each other's point of view, and then maybe if any of them have some emotional attachment in one of those pieces, they can recognize that and say, okay, now I can see it from a business perspective, or a security perspective, or an engineering perspective. And I think I did a post not that long ago about focusing on the end delivery. So you're building a pipeline for somebody or for something that's going to make your company money. Hopefully, and otherwise you're doing it for the wrong reason. So having your security team understand that if they've written a policy, I've got to be able to implement that policy, and maybe your engineering team to be able to say, okay, well, I can't work with this. I have to deal with mask data or hash data now. Okay, well, I can deal with that because I know that keeps security happy, but I can still deliver the end product that's needed. So, so that's opposing views, or three different departments or viewpoint stakeholders in getting something decided, all doing the right thing. All either I'm implementing a policy, or I need to make money, or I need to be able to do my job. That those having when you're having decisions, when you have those sort of situations, having all those parties involved and looking at it from each other's point of view, and the security department saying, okay, right, okay, I know that policy like that, I see the effect it's going to have, and now I've seen the risk factor of it. Okay, now it's fine. Okay, you don't need to implement it verbatim like that. I'll amend the policy. And I think it can go the other way around. Probably not as often is when your engineers notice some security hole, they can go and tell the security department. But I think it's normally that doesn't always happen.
Interesting. I mean, how much of the role of an architect do you think is just being a good diplomat and a good listener?
I'd say a large portion of it. Something I did another post about this recently, and just getting some people's views of it is you are an arbitrator. I think you're a storyteller. I think you're also a validator. So you're challenging either sometimes the business requirements. So do you really want to do it like that? Wouldn't it be maybe a step back and just understanding it? So even like having a good business analyst that sort of like to understand what really is the requirement, not the request. I think another one is keeping your developers real, I think, as well. And this is where I think the difference between architecture, enterprise architecture, data architecture, metadata architecture, or if the fragmenting architecture, data architecture space as well, is depending on what role you are there. So I think if you're more of that solution or data architect that is working embedded in a data team, a data product team, or maybe supporting a couple of data product teams, you need to either, when they're doing the story pointing and things like that, and someone say, yeah, that's 20 story points out, and you, hold on a minute, I could knock that up in a couple of hours or something, and that's happened in the past with me. So and I think you get respect from the team when you do something like that, because they say, oh, okay, right, he does know what he's talking about. Maybe we'll listen to him a little bit more. So yes, I think that part, and then you're doing that storytelling to the team. Sometimes, why are we doing it this way? That we have to because the stakeholders, but we'll do it the correct way later, or we'll recognise it as technical, and liaise it or explaining to the development team that may not have visibility of why we're making a stupid decision now. I know it's a stupid decision. We're doing it for a good reason, at least. So a big aspect, a large aspect. I think if we're going to ask them what other skills are needed, and this is something I've been thinking about a bit recently because of previous chats about this, is
right.
Depending on the size of the company, depending on the maturity of the company, depending on the aspirations of the board to make it something more data driven, will depend on what sort of mixture of data architects you need. I think having that tier one of that enterprise data architect and maybe a data architect or a solution data architect, that's for the likes of big oil companies or gas companies and larger say older school companies, that's needed, because it's just you need someone to be able to talk to the board, maybe not as at a lower technical level, so talking more enterprise language to that board, and then having them liaise or work collectively with a solution data architect that can work more closer with the teams. So something on this as well, because I was thinking about architecture diagrams and drawing them for the audience that you're drawing them in, and this is something I struggled with for a time, because I'd want them to be as accurate as possible when I'm drawing them. And when you talk accurate as possible, they've got lines all over the place, because actually that can actually go back there, or that does actually go through this thing over here, and I didn't want to cross the lines in my diagram, it looks messy now, and it's I think understanding the layers of abstraction that you should have in those diagrams, or the storytelling that goes with those diagrams and the audience that story is for, was something that it took me a while to understand. So now I can do I like to refer as a Janet and John diagram. It's a very simple, block diagram. An AWS architect would die because I haven't got the VPCs on it, and I haven't put where I've got the load balancer, and I haven't got the correct symbol for Kubernetes, or that's a different lens, a different level, and a different one down. But if you've only got that one viewpoint, which is that low level one, you're never going to convince the board or someone like that to, we want to add this new capability or function, and this is where we're going to put it in, and they'll see about 10 different connections in there. They go, that looks expensive, so it's not going to go anywhere. But if they saw it as, okay, it's a simple capability, it sits alongside here, and we've sized it accordingly, and we're confident we can do it in this, and this is the business value. It's the right sort of conversation to have to that level of audience. So, and unless you have the architecture unicorn, which is the one that can do that Swiss Army knife of architects that is able to operate at all levels. But it's tough in the landscape out there now to have that sort of knowledge in all those areas.
Have you met a unicorn architect before?
No, I haven't. I would even say I'm close myself. So I mean, I've had pretty much a lot of different job titles with the word architect in it over the years. But I'm no infrastructure architect. I'm no in-depth cloud architect. I've got a good understanding of all of them, but I can't go deep in all the areas, and that's where you collaborate with people. You know the ones that can fill that gap for you, and they're a trusted person, and they can talk to you in a way you can understand it, or you can relate to something. And then I think you don't need to go down and work out, okay, what Panda libraries do I need to do that, and what Docker container I need to spin up to do it. Just need to know is put it up in a Docker image, spin it up. Okay, I don't need to know. Luckily, I've got some people I can call that can help me out on that bit if I needed it.
Oh, that's a good spot to be in. So, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it's interesting too. I know we have another talk scheduled, about architecture specifically in a different domain, but architecture is one of those things too. I know when I've been researching data architecture for the book we're doing, the more I researched about architecture, I feel like the less I actually understood about it, because there's so many competing definitions of architecture, and I would say some of it's from committees who I think have their own, I wouldn't say agenda, but maybe their own purpose for defining architecture the way they do. And so it's interesting because there's a lot of people with the I guess the word architect in their title. I mean, and we do data architecture, but when I look into actually data architecture, what does it actually mean? That's it's a bit of a paradox, because I think you know it when you see it, but when you and when you're doing it, but when you step back to kind of okay, so if I were to ask an architect how would you describe architecture, and I've done this with several architects, several enterprise architects, several data architects, several solutions architects, and everyone's just like, huh. Okay. I gotta go real quick. I'll be right back.
So I think, you're right. There's no clear definition of what a data architect does, and you'll sometimes have that list of a whole job list of all the different things that they need. I think I tend to see it probably focus one way or the other. So you have more of the modeling architect that's doing the metadata attributes you're going to add on each of the layers of the dimensional modeling, your data vault modeling part of it. Architect how that's going to be done. Probably less of the actual coding of it, and just making sure that everyone's following some architectural best practice or patterns. So I think one of the key aspects of an architect, or whatever their focus is defining patterns, defining reusable components or patterns that serve a certain purpose or a use case. They're defined, and they're defined in a way that can be reused. And going down to the next, you could map them down to the technologies that you think they would do that, and then maybe the technology standards of how to implement it. How far that architect would go down that process of doing the fine details of it, but that is I think one of the key aspects of an architect is that it's building blocks. Okay, you're thinking ahead. You're making sure what you do is reusable. And yes, I think that's one of the things. So I talk about that data modeling sort of focus one. So there's that. Then that could move into more of that integration, like mapping, of the different endpoints that may be coming in, or understanding any transformations that may have it. So touching more into that BA sort of space to some degree, going into that, and maybe they'd be giving the business analyst a steer of how to go and get those detailed requirements, but you're shaping or scoping, again, another component or building block of what's needed to deliver the old outcome. And again, I think the older days, the architect was there to do a HLD. They'd come and go and write yourself a high level design. They would have had a BRD, business requirement document, being given to them. You could go through the TOGAF list of artifacts if you wanted to, and just go on forever. Which
I spent a lot of time going through that recently. It's
TOGAF's a good shopping list to see what you might need. You never need all of it. Yeah, you can take just bits of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the world of agile and the move away from these long 60, 70 page high level designs that you go and take through an architecture review board and sit there and debate about it and go back. I mean, I've chaired these architecture review boards. I've put designs through them. It's not how things happen or should happen nowadays. So that architect needs to now become a iterative, doing what's needed for that next sprint, pipe cleaning, looking at seeing, okay, right, I know what I'm doing to do the next PI planning, right, this thing will be useful for that later. Let's design that to mean that I can build on top of it. I do this for a lot of clients at the moment. You can look for demand from tenants that are coming in to identify common themes that are needed between them. You can use one of those iterations or those vehicles, I like to call them, to maybe get you to V1.0 of your change data capture management or your database change. You're keeping your structures up to date, or your ELT framework, or whatever the next little bit is, and then this is when that community comes into it, using that community, knowing it's all there. They go, oh, I can use it. I can build on top of that. Then you can get a bit of collaboration between different teams that maybe expand in those frameworks. But you're looking ahead. You're not just thinking, what we're going to do this one sprint. All right. So that would be the architect's role in that. Is that you're not just looking at that one user story. You're looking at the features. You're looking at the things that haven't even made it in features that you're hearing just from general conversations. And then you're then thinking about that and say, right, how can I get something that does that without having to go and get the budget of a massive budget to have a whole epic that's all based on just this one thing, when you can take thin slices of it and build it up over time. But you can't do that without an architectural view or roadmap. I think that's what I do nowadays as an architect.
I always kind of look at it kind of like an expedition leader on a mountaineering expedition. Like, you kind of setting the general course. Things are going to happen, right? You got weather, rockfall, whatever. Things you didn't anticipate, especially if you're trying to do like a first ascent. So it's, but in general, at least you're keeping the team focused on the end goal. The path may vary, but as long as you get there in one piece, or exactly, and then get back also. I always kind of equate things to that, and it seems like that's what an architect does. Not saying that like that. It's kind of weird because I don't think an architect is like the leader of the pack per se, but I think they're definitely setting the tone. Otherwise, who is?
They're that guidance point. They're that the Sherpa that's taking it. Don't worry, you're fine. You're going the right way. Or do you really want to do that? You're that validation for them, so they can make sure they are going that right. I like that analogy of the journey, because the end destination may be rough, may change, and the path you take may adjust. But I think I like to work our clients, and assume the same when you work with your clients, is you're helping those people don't go that far off track. So you're keeping us close to that path and adjusting it. Use that rock fall thing, is like, you don't need it. Work around that piece because it's not relevant for you. So
right.
That is I think a true architecture mission, or what they should. I think the architecture has got a bad name in the past from maybe the old days of maybe older style enterprise architects. I know that there is a need for enterprise architecture. I know that, and it's helping that strategy piece, especially in large organizations. But they were seen to be that sort of like council of this is what's happening, and that they weren't always very well connected to the community that was under them. So I think that's starting to change, but I think there's still some sort of like bad taste in people's mouths with enterprise architecture.
Understandably so, though, because it's one of those situations I think where people were leading from behind in the old days. Like pointing a gun at your head and saying move that way, or not even that malicious, just saying just keep marching forward. Whereas I think the modern architecture, it's leading from the front, right? Like if you can't, if you can't hang with us and, back to the mountaineering thing, if you can't climb along with us, then you're just basically a middle manager, and as climbers, we don't really need you.
You want to be a leader, taking people on that journey with you, and and they want to be on that journey. You don't want to be saying, quickly, faster, move quicker, that way. Why? Just do it. It's people don't react well to that, and they shouldn't as well.
Yeah. Speaking of mountains, kind of switching gears a bit, you spent some time in the Alps recently?
There's I'm already counting down the days to next season. So very keen skier. I've been skiing.
Nice.
I actually used to be a ski instructor when I was when I was at college. But a big passion of mine. I think this year was a good. I was working not all the time over there. It was a nicer environment to have some thinking time. It was obviously the lifts weren't open in Europe, or in Switzerland it was, but not in France. So there was lots of reinventing old sort of ski equipment to using it different ways, which I found was quite inspiring to see. People doing split boards with skins on the bottom, and then walking up the mountains with old mountain bike, cross country ski bindings on them, but you're going up. So it was I'm not quite as crazy as I used to be, but I used to try and see if I get a top speed each time. But I did find myself starting to, but I stopped out. I think 95 kilometers an hour is when I started thinking, I think maybe I don't need to try and beat 100 anymore. It's not worth it. I'm too old for this.
I think we need you. So it's awesome. What was it like, I guess, trying to balance work and skiing during COVID?
Difficult. I got the idea when I went out there was I think, I'll do a few hours in the morning, then work the rest of the day. I think I quoted that. I think it's probably the hardest I worked in a period of time. I think because of there was curfews and things like that, you couldn't go out in the evening. So wow. I was just hauled up from like 7 a.m. till 2 a.m. Just trying to get a head start on a few things. It's been a really busy year for us, and we've just been expanding. So it's just been trying to get one step ahead, which has been a challenge this year. But I think we're there now. We're nearly there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know we experienced the same thing in our business. COVID, when March of 2020 hit, I think everyone was putting things on pause, right? But after that, I think when people kind of got a breather and saw kind of the new landscape, I know we were busier than ever, and it sounds like you guys were too. So
yeah,
awesome.
I think it's like a calm before the storm. When it was happening last year, I wasn't twiddling my thumbs to have stuff to do, but it just wasn't the pace of life I was used to, and I didn't take too well to it. I was moaning I was too bored, or there wasn't enough going on. But now I look back and think, wow, it was good thinking time. We made some good strategic thoughts or partnerships, or create some great relationships via LinkedIn, which have ended up having conversations like yourself, Joe, and other people in the LinkedIn community, which I probably wouldn't have found the time last year to have built up that network if I was as busy as I was then. And I found I quite enjoy it as well now. So now I wish I never thought I would have. I wasn't really big one for social media or posts or things like that. So that was a bit of a shock to me. The beginning, like writing a post, was, oh God, I've got to do another one. What am I going to write about? And now it's like just something pops into your head. Let's do a WTF on that one, or which seems to be the common theme at the moment. I'll move to another one. But before it was like top data tips on this, or lessons learned. So it's whatever you get some inspiration from. I think one come from my son last year when he was talking about. So about this millennium bug, Dad? That happened in year 2000. Yeah, of course. I was dealing with it. But they didn't keep the part of the data. I went, what? That's stupid. Okay. Let me explain how things are different there, and disk price was storage was expensive and things like that. So it's it's things you take for granted from living, well, not living the dream, but living this world of data for all these years, and I do enjoy talk about the old days. Oh, this is what we used to do.
Yeah, I have the same conversations with people too. I mean, my background is a bit different. I was purely in kind of the analytics, I guess what is now data science realm, and from the early 2000s and on, and it's interesting having that sort of a context, I would say, with data, because I think it's interesting because I don't think a lot of the questions have necessarily changed for most businesses. I'm hard pressed to think of what at the end of the day has changed. Like questions about consumer behavior, maybe there's some details, but at the end of the day, like, are people buying what we're selling, right? Are we selling what people want to buy? If you're doing that kind of thing, I guess. Are we profitable? Like, these questions haven't gone away. I don't know that they'll really ever go away. It's interesting because you're just basically finding new ways to answer the same questions that you did before.
True, and I think the things that the amount of data points have probably changed now. What you have got captured that you can add to it, so that adds something.
Yep.
And I think the availability or the accessibility of that data. I mean, when I started out, so data warehousing was downstream, back end thing, wasn't always supported. It wasn't seen as mission critical. Didn't normally have a DR backup or DR capabilities or failover. It was just too expensive to do that. And you already had to beg to go and get the money from the CEO to go and buy your Exadata box, the teaser, your Teradata, because they weren't cheap. To convince them to invest that money, it was never part of your critical platform, but that's changed now. It's seen as operational, and now it needs to be operational. And that data is now making intraday or second decisions on either people's applications or stocking or how they're going to how they distribute a lorry, or the quickest journey to somewhere. There's so many more opportunities available now that weren't there before. But you're right, the end goal hasn't changed. Am I making money? How I can make better money? Are my customers happy? Are my staff happy? If you can get them all right, then your business is going well.
That's for sure. Yeah, it's also interesting too. I think the expectations, to your point, have changed. Whereas before, I think ETL jobs used to take, sometimes I've seen up to like a few days to finish because data grew so much, but the pipelining tools were too expensive, didn't have the resources, and people just accepted it. It's like, it's always late. Nowadays, if you say it's always late, it's not good. Nor is it viable. So I think that's changed a ton, where people definitely expect data to be there as quickly as possible. So they make decisions, and also machine learning changed everything too. I think where if you had decisions you need to make en masse, with lots of data, and it could be automated, that's a perfect candidate for machine learning. And so that's I think the other thing, where back in the day the technology just wasn't there for machine learning.
Yeah, and I think that this is much more your bag than mine, the machine learning part. But the difference between operational use cases for machine learning and which is totally new, because you didn't have that availability of that data or the volumes or that real-time aspect. Whereas the other sort of ML, you could do some decisioning things that's maybe based on a campaign that's going out. So you could have put some of those things into that, but now it's come back through and it's now part of your operational system. The lines are blurred as well between what's your data platform and what's your operational platform. I think how we've always seen the data warehouse or your data lake or your data platform having contracts to source its data. Now I'm seeing more that is providing contracts to provide data to operational systems. So you've got that two-way conversation that's happening now, and the algorithms being retrained on that historical data, but it's there ready to be used for that intra decision making.
That's a big one. What's your view on I guess data engineers needing to know more about machine learning?
So Yeah, going back to that fragmentation of the roles and responsibilities. So depending on what end of the pipeline you're at as a data engineer, if you're more that sourcing of the data, or if you move more into the modeling of that data to either start some star schemas or some reporting structures or some just large column-based tables, if that's what's needed. You've been on that side of it. Then it may be another fragmentation of that. So having three sort of viewpoints of a data engineer. One just purely on ingest, CDC, streaming, having more of that CIC infrastructure maybe, or having more of that DevOps sort of skills on that side of it. To one being more about transformations, best practice, maybe your data vault structures and how you'll do that, maybe your data quality profiling that will be doing that, and then building up your data marts there. Then maybe there's that next fragmentation, which is the one you're talking about, is data engineers getting more in that machine learning space where. And you see now Snowflake has got Snowpark, Databricks has got it's Delta Lake and it's the original machine learning capabilities. They're all getting merged together now. So if now you want that data engineer that's going to be writing a data frame within Snowflake that's going to be querying that data, they now do need to know a little bit more about. They're moving more into that machine ML ops engineer. So, I think there's probably three clear sort of areas, and I think until you said that, I was really just thinking about the two, but just extending it really to that endpoint or to the machine learning aspect as well, because they would need probably some of that DevOpsy sort of skills of getting that connectivity and things there, but they'll also probably need that modeling sort of knowledge as well of how the data is used, as well as having that good understanding of maths and mathematical algorithms. So. They'll be becoming the unicorn of the data engineers, and I think there's one other thing that we touched on. So I think another conversation is a two-way street. So you've got your data scientists out there that they've been doing all their data prep because no one else is doing it for them. They're doing that data cleansing, wrangling, and probably maybe less of the data science aspect. So they may say. Actually, the math part, I prefer like they could move, and that they would have that ML ops data science sort of way of working or talk their language, so they could move into that more of an engineering role. So it's getting more complicated out there.
It seems to be. I talk a lot of people in the ML ops space too, and it's I think there's some distinctions. There's just some obvious differences, but anymore when you look at the tooling, there's so much overlap right now with observability, especially in data quality and so forth. It confuses me at least where one begins and the other ends, and I think that's just going to continue from a tooling perspective, especially because there's a lot of money right now, and a lot of people are starting data companies and raising a lot of money, and so that will attract more and more people into the space. So.
Do you see there being a market for auto data prep tools? So something that's going to be driving that the likes of taking data from Fivetran, Airbyte, it's HVR, Kafka, whatever that stuff's coming in, but then it having understanding of that and going, okay, right, let's provide some additional value. Maybe give it raw and give it the other one, but.
Big time, yeah. I mean, that's always been that the data prep piece has always been the hardest part. I think of structured machine learning for structured data.
Yeah,
I know that's where I actually got interested in data engineering. Was I was doing automated machine learning, and data prep was always the hardest part.
Yeah,
and trying to do that in an automated fashion for like unknown data that was coming in, and trying to universalize that. That's what got me interested in data engineering. So like, this is by far a bigger problem than. In every aspect of, I think, automated ML than actually making ML algorithms spit out predictions. Because if the data doesn't work, then obviously your predictions ain't going to work, and that's kind of how it goes. So
and I think if you are able to prove your data prep is more accurate with its processing of data when you've already got an algorithm, now look, I've just proved it now. If I did that prep on that data before without having any knowledge and using it, auto prepped, your algorithm has a high Gini score of this now, and here you go, I proved it. Here you go, buy my platform. I've just saved you that amount of money. So when are we going to build it, Joe? When are we going to build this?
We'll get started next week. So
okay, cool. All right.
No, in all seriousness, that is I think one of the bigger pieces, especially with structured data right now, and it always has been. It's just the prep piece, because structured data in itself is pretty gnarly. Because depending on the type of algorithm you're using, right? It either find signal or it might not. And I know there's some nice curated structured data sets that lend themselves nicely to kind of linear models or, even non-linear models. But it's sort of if you're able to have a better data set, you're able to I think, attach it to the correct algorithm. Not that, no free lunch theorem of machine learning basically says like it doesn't kind of, any algorithm will, on a data set will converge to some result at some point. So, but yeah, I think that that's a big problem. And I think also observability, just understanding like when you need to be retrained. I mean, I have a lot of friends working in that machine learning, observability space. But then when you look at that as compared to observability on data, for example, data quality, data drift for analytics, even like I think those are basically similar.
That's
approaches,
exactly what I think. You're profiling, you're collecting that additional metadata about the data, you're tracking that over time. I think there's other inputs as well, is smart contracts, because if you're taking the data from a Salesforce API, you already know about it all. The Salesforce understand, it can tell you, this is how it is. I can. It may have to extend there, but there is context that we taken out of the contracts are there. That with your quality, with your profiling, with your special machine learning, also data prep piece as well. I think that's what's needed. And then if you're able to evidence how the positive effect that it's had on that data, and to keep monitoring that, you've got a product that pays for itself.
Oh yeah, big time. That's we're solving. I think kind of closing out. I mean, you live in the UK. I mean, walk me through what's the data and tech scene there like? I'm in the US and I don't know much about it.
Yeah, so. I mean, it's in London. There's quite a big focus on data. It's very hard to get data engineers here. Everyone's setting up data projects. I mean, most of the large tech companies, the older schools, the Oracle, Salesforce. So Salesforce has got its head office in town. Near Liverpool Street. I think it's called Salesforce Tower now. Quite aptly named. I think there was a competition they did. If they rented the most floors, they were able to name the building. It was called Heron Tower originally. Snowflake's got a massive office here as well, and
nice.
So there's a strong presence there. I think the other areas that we seem to be another strong tech presence over this side of the pond is Israel seems to have a lot talking to a lot of people over there at the moment. There's a lot going on there. So so that's sort of like the other little hotspot I'd say over this side. But everyone always wants to go to San Francisco to go and launch their company. So that's
funny. Everyone I know from San Francisco wants to leave San Francisco right now. So they're just so tired of it. No offense to people who live there and like it. I travel there too. No, it's hilarious. I think during COVID, we got in Salt Lake where I live. I think we can count like over 20 people that I know personally from the Bay Area who moved out here because they're just like.
I mean, it's not cheap, is it, San Francisco to live? So you can probably get a bit more back. I don't know how. It's probably not cheap where you are as well, but I think
not anymore since they all moved here.
So everyone's moved out of London now, so the price has gone down in London.
Yeah. Yeah, my friend Andrew Jones, he machine learning data science instructor in London. I think he just moved out of the city and is paying like substantially less in living costs there, which good for him. Do you still live in London, or are you out of there?
Yeah, no, I'm still here, East London. So apart from I say if I can get away with the Alps as much as I can, and I'm just off for a little tour soon. I'm off working from Spain and.
Nice.
Got to pop. We've got some people we hired in Bulgaria, so we're going to pop there, and then I'm actually going to pop to Israel as well. Actually, so
nice. It's quite the whirlwind tour. Where in Spain are you going to hang out?
Near Alicante, so it's just staying at my dad's place.
Oh, cool. Not bad.
Just working from another location. That's all it is.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
back when we could travel, I used to do the same thing in Asia. So, but that's interesting. Well, cool, man. Well, I think it's a good spot to drop for people who want to find out more about you. How can they find out more?
So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Chris Tabb Data Tips is
Nice.
the URL for that. Our website Leading Edge IT is www.leit.ltd. But yeah, I mean, just reach out, join us on. I like the community, LinkedIn community.
That's great.
I like collaborating on that. So I think that's the best place to meet people with shared views on data. So check us out on that.
You got somewhat like a residency almost, I would say, on the Let's Talk Data Engineering chats on Friday on LinkedIn Live.
It's when I run out of things to say, I'll turn down the invite. But yeah, it's a good chat with you, Matt. I really thoroughly enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, for sure. Right on, Chris. Well, have a good day. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right,
thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.